Welcome to my 10-week Tarot Intensive Training course, and I'm very sure that you will feel very confident about your tarot readings by the time we are done. So today, to start off, I'd like to just talk a little bit first about the tarot and about the idea of divination. Divination, the word derives from the Latin word divinare, which means to divine. Now, the Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary lists divinare as meaning the act or practice that seeks to foresee or foretell future events or discover hidden knowledge, usually by the interpretation of omens or by the aid of supernatural powers. More simply, it means that we are using certain tools to access the wisdom of the spirit or an intuitive perception that would not normally be accessible to us. And all through the ages, every culture has used different divination tools. For example, the runes that you have all no doubt heard of is a divination tool. The tarot, of course, is a divination tool. We've had divination rods. The Greeks, of course, had oracles and seers. Numbers of times in the Bible, we hear stories of certain people throwing lots to make decisions, you've probably seen this on TV or in movies quite a lot, where people get little bones or stones and they throw them. And the pattern that shows up is where the information is divined from. The Romans had some more barbaric rituals, and they used to use the entrails of animals and then drop the entrails and see what the pattern there suggests. So the key word in all of this is patterns. We are creatures of patterns. We are just our physical capacity for protection, really, through evolution, has been attracted to the idea of finding patterns, because we would need to recognize a good pattern on a snake, for example, or a bad pattern, or a pattern on a dangerous snake versus a not dangerous snake, if our ancestors millions of years ago were to survive. So it's hardwired into us to find patterns. And so this is a lot of the way divination works, is in some ways we see a pattern, our conscious mind becomes preoccupied with the pattern, and as this is occupied with trying to divine or trying to recognize the meaning in the pattern, our intuition or the wisdom of our spirit is then free of the conscious mind to be able to access the hidden information or the intuitive information. So as we go through this course, we will be working quite a lot with colour and symbols and stories as well, so that there's a combination of using both the traditional meanings of the cards, but also doing that in such a way that there's quite a lot of space and time available for the wisdom of your spirit or for your intuitive perception to become a part of the interpretation process. And in this way, your particular style of reading the tarot when you're finished will have a basis in traditional meanings, the meanings of the individual cards and the meanings of the different positions, which is something that we will look at in spreads later in this course. But you will be able to take all of that traditional information and add in your own intuitive perception and make your own particular readings very much unique and distinctive unto yourself. So in other words, you'll be able to develop your own sort of style of reading the tarot. I do want to just say a few words about divination in the Bible. I get a lot of people a lot of time saying that divination was condemned by God and all of this. And this may not bother you, but just in case you've had any sneaking suspicion, is there something strange or unusual or cultish about the tarot? I just want to refer to make a couple of references to the Bible. First, Daniel. In Daniel, there are quite a number of references to Daniel being a prophet of God. More than welcome, if you feel like a Sunday afternoon reading, to go ahead and check that out yourself. He did actually use quite a lot of magic and astrology, and as well as soothsayers and prophets in his search for answers. In Joshua, the 12 tribes of Israel cast lots to decide what they should do with the conquered lands of Canaan, and that's something I mentioned earlier. Casting lots is throwing objects and seeking wisdom in the patterns. And finally, in Acts, the 11 remaining apostles cast lots to decide who should replace Judas Iscariot. So there actually is quite a long history of divination in the Bible. Obviously not the tarot, because the tarot came into existence really in the 14th and 15th centuries when it was used as playing cards in European courts. And it wasn't until really the 18th century or the 1800s that the occultists that were emerging at the time, such as Aleister Crowley and the Golden Dawn, adopted these court playing cards and decided to use them to divine meanings from the images. And really from that, a very elaborate and very, very beautiful tradition of designing cards and some fabulous artwork has come into existence as different people sought to put relevant sort of pictorial stories on each of the cards. And we'll be using these pictorial stories throughout this course as well to help you access the wisdom of your own spirit and your own intuition, to help you understand what each of these cards means. I just want to say a few words about what we can do with the cards. Now, traditionally, a tarot reading involves a seeker, who is somebody who has a question, coming to see somebody with the wisdom and the know-how of being able to read the tarot. Now, the tarot is open to anybody who is willing to develop their own intuitive ability and really put the work and the practice into mastering the art of reading the tarot. It doesn't really require any special occult or magic ability at all. So what happens, I'm sure most of you have had a tarot reading, if not already been working with the cards yourselves, but what happens is somebody comes in, they have a question, and the tarot reader will shuffle the cards, lay them out, and interpret that spread to help the seeker. Now, we will look at different ways to ask questions and what the most effective way to draft a question is for the most information to be revealed in the tarot spread as we go through this course. And we will also look at different shuffling methods, and we'll work with some different spreads that are useful for different questions. And we'll also look at how the card positions in each of these spreads interacts and influences each other. But don't be worried about any of that now. There's quite a lot of work to do just to get to that point, and by the time you get to that point of doing elaborate, say, Celtic crossed spreads, the tarot cards at that point will really be quite second nature to you. So I want to just quite quickly, before we move on, address the idea of fortune telling in the tarot. Now, the tarot was never really designed as a fortune telling tool. The tarot was best used for accessing unseen information and helpful information for the seeker in order to empower the seeker to with useful information to help paint the full picture, and to give that seeker the kind of information that they need to really make an informed decision. Ultimately, there's no real way to tell fortunes because we have free will. Our lives are not fated. In other words, we have choice. We can make decisions. So if, for instance, a suggestion comes up in the cards, or a message comes up in the cards, and we will look at the positions that are very clearly give these messages later. If a message comes through in the card and the advice in the card is to do something to help manifest a certain outcome, if the seeker chooses not to take those actions, well, then that outcome is not going to happen. And I've often said, quite a lot of people come and they want to know what their love life is going to be like. And I can lay out all of the cards they want. But if the advice and the message of the cards is to get out and socialize and which is, I know sounds obvious, but if they decide that they're going to stay home, well, they're just going to have to hope that it was the pizza delivery guy who is their soulmate, who they're in search of. So in other words, if certain actions are suggested and the seeker does not act upon those, then they're not going to be able to put the energies in motion for the outcome that they seek to manifest. So just to say a few words about the course. First, we're going to be dealing with obviously the tarot deck. I have recommended the Rider-Waite deck, and I actually have this tiny little pocket-sized Rider-Waite deck that I love because I can take it around anywhere with me quite easily. Now the tarot are divided into major arcana and minor arcana cards, 22 major arcana and 56 minor arcana. And the minor arcana cards are further divided into 4 suits. We have cups, wands, swords and pentacles. Now these cards all represent different meanings, and the power behind these meanings is going to be different. If you put out a number of cards and you see a lot of major cards, you know that something's going on in your life or the seeker's life that is quite tumultuous, and in a good way or a bad way, because change can be very, very good at clearing away old habits. But often if there are a lot of major cards in a reading, it indicates that almost sometimes forces beyond the seeker are at play there, which it can happen at certain stages in life where there's a huge amount of change and growth and development going on. The minor cards usually have a mirror something in a major card. So for instance, the Two of Cups card can indicate love and affinity and bonding, and all of these emotional things. And then the Lover's card is very, very similar, except it really packs a bigger punch. So if you see a Lover's card, you could go out there and just be smitten in the course of your day. And if you draw the Two of Cups and you walk out and you're in intimacy, you might just feel a really nice bond, but really know that you have a choice there whether or not to proceed with it or not. And we'll be looking at more of these sort of major and minor cards and how they match and how they kind of differ as we go through the course as well. So just to go back to the pictures on the cards and the pictorial sort of tradition that has sprung up around the tarot. Each card, and for instance, just as I was mentioning, each card has a picture, as you can see. And we can read these cards highly intuitively, which I highly recommend spending some time with this. So in other words, when you look at this card, you see a lot of yellow and a lot of pale blue as the colours. And if you want, and if you're visual, to start with, how do those colours make you feel? Now, and on top of that, we also have the man and the woman and the sharing. And so you can look at the man and the woman here, and it seems that he is giving her a cup. So what does this suggest to you? What does the sort of the mood of the whole scene suggest to you? The demeanour of the people involved, the sort of unity of the little sort of sun and angel overhead. So you can initially start to interpret the different elements of each of these pictures and the colours and the mood of the pictures, and that will really help you paint a picture of what this card means to you without even having to go to the course materials. And as we move along, where each card is positioned will also affect its meaning, and we'll get to that in due course. Now, I do also just want to say it's very, very good to get familiar with the traditional meanings of the cards as well. And so I've supplied charts with the traditional meanings, what some of the similarities are with other cards and some other cards that are very conflicting. And the reason why I've supplied these sort of reinforcing and opposing cards is that when we get more into seeing how the cards interact with each other, we'll find that if you find a lot of cards that are reinforcing each other, there's probably a nice harmonious feeling going on in your spread. If you find cards that are conflicting with each other, Obviously there's probably some conflicting situations going on, or people are being advised to do something that maybe they don't want to do. And again, this might all sound a little overwhelming right now, but we'll get to all of that in due course. I just really want to give you an idea of where we're going to be going in this course. And of course, the more familiar you become with the cards, the easier this all becomes. It'll just become second nature to you. So the structure of the course is that the first part of the course is really going to focus on just getting familiar with the cards themselves, because it's very difficult to really arrive at an intuitive understanding of the cards if in your mind all of the time you're very much aware of, oh, what does that card mean? What's the traditional meaning? And it's very difficult when you're constantly trying to think of these things to make the very calm space to intuitively understand the card. So this is a step-by-step process. Each week there will be exercises that build on each other to help you really get a very fluid and easy flow of understanding of the traditional meanings of the cards, that also allows room for an intuitive interpretation as well. So this week I'd like you to do a one card daily reading. And this is quite simple. Let me just pick some cards. Just start by shuffling the deck a few times, just very, very simply. We'll get into more shuffling techniques later. And as you shuffle, just ask for your own spirit, your own guides, if you work with guides, or the wisdom of the tarot, to give you, or to help you choose a card that may be relevant to your day. Now you could do this first thing in the morning if you have time, and if you don't have time in the mornings, just do it last thing at night before you go to bed and ask for a card that will be relevant to your day the next day. Now, when you have shuffled all the cards, what I normally do for something this simple is just shuffle, just maybe cut the cards and then just take the card from the top. So in this case, I've chosen the Strength card. So when you pick your card, just turn it over and then just sit with it for a few minutes and just sense what the picture on the card, the action, the colors, the mood, etc., what's going on there, what's the action, and just sit, and of course the word, and then just look and see if it's a major arcana or a minor arcana card. And here we have Strength, so it's a major arcana card. So I know that this card has quite a lot of punch to it. And so just sit with it and for a while and just get a sense intuitively of what this makes you feel like, what you think the meaning of this card could be. And when you've done that, you can go to the course materials, to the reference list, and just look up what the traditional meaning of the card is and how this card can play out in your life. Now don't worry at this stage if the traditional meanings and your intuitive interpretation differs. This will really all start to blend together by the end of the course. Now, as you go through your day, look for opportunities during the day where the meaning of this card becomes relevant. You may see situations where you're witnessing strength, or you're witnessing the qualities of strength. Or you may find situations in the course of your day where you're called on to be strong, or where there are situations where you really need to find some inner strength. And doing this each day, that will be seven cards in 7 days. I actually recommend you do this the whole way throughout the course, because there are 78 cards. If you do it for the 10 weeks of the course and 1 week after, you will have gotten through each card in the whole tarot deck, and they'll all have become second nature to you by then. So if you start to look at how they play out in the day, it begins to reinforce how they actually work in your life. So it brings them to life. It makes them more than just a picture on a card. So do that each day this week, and then just write out at the end of your day or a few times during the week how you saw, what you interpreted from the card, and how you saw that play out in your life that day. All right, and I will look forward to seeing you next week as we take our tarot understanding to the next stage.